The rain was falling softly against the window when I first realized my marriage had become a cage. Faith Sullivan, my sister-in-law, had been trying desperately to conceive for 3 long years, but every attempt ended in disappointment. Doctors' traditional remedies, whispered advice from relatives, nothing seemed to work. Her womb remained empty, and with every month that passed, her despair grew louder, filling the Sullivan household like a haunting melody that no one could escape. Anthony. My husband sat me down one evening, his face grim but strangely calm, as if he had rehearsed the words. "Brooke," he said, "Faith needs your help. You could carry a child for her." My heart stopped. For a moment I thought I had misheard him. Carry a child for her. He wanted me, his wife, to bear a baby not for us but for his sister. The absurdity of it stole my breath. When I refused, thinking that would end the matter, the entire Sullivan family lined up to plead their case. Margaret, my mother-in-law, clasped her hands dramatically and shook her head with disapproval. "It's just one baby, Brooke. What's the difference if it's raised by you or by Faith? Blood is blood." Their voices piled on one after another. "Why are you being so selfish? Don't you see? If Faith can't give Jared a child, he'll divorce her. You'd let your sister-in-law's marriage crumble when you could fix it with something as simple as a pregnancy." I stood my ground, my hands trembling, but my voice cold. I said no. And that no cost me more than I could have imagined. Because when begging failed, they turned to coercion. One night they slipped something into my drink, and when my body weakened, they locked me in a room with Jared Greene, Faith's husband. The betrayal was so profound it burned into my bones. If they thought they could destroy my dignity and expect me to remain silent, they had miscalculated. That night, something inside me broke. If they wanted to make my life unbearable, then I swore they would never know peace again. The memory of that betrayal followed me everywhere, even after the lock turned and the door opened again. Each time I returned home from work, the sound of Faith's wailing pierced my ears before I even set foot inside. On one particular evening, exhausted from overtime, I froze in the doorway, listening to her sobs echoing through the walls. There she was again, collapsed dramatically in Margaret's arms, crying about her marriage, about Jared's impatience, about her barren womb. Faith and Jared had been together for 5 years before marrying. 3 years had passed since, and still no child. People whispered, but I knew the truth. When they were younger, Faith had become pregnant several times. But Jared had been careless, dismissive, convinced they were too young for parenthood. Each time he urged her to end it. Those choices left scars she could never undo. Now doctors shook their heads. Specialists offered little hope. She tried Western medicine, then herbal concoctions so bitter they twisted her face with every sip. She clung to ancient remedies passed down by neighbors and relatives. Nothing worked. I once suggested in vitro fertilization. The idea horrified them. Margaret clutched her pearls as if I'd cursed the family name. Absolutely not. A child must come from the womb naturally, from our bloodline, our family. Who knows what kind of mix-ups happen in those clinics? That's not a real baby. Jared echoed, his mother-in-law dismissing the very notion. He wouldn't raise someone else's child. It had to be his seed naturally planted. His arrogance made me sick. Faith, poor and foolish, continued swallowing the bitter teas, her hopes shrinking with every failed attempt. And yet when I walked through the door that night, her tears shifted. She turned her watery eyes on me, searching for sympathy. "Look, Mom," she whimpered to Margaret. "How can he treat me this way? Back when we were dating, I sacrificed so much for him, so many pregnancies lost because of him. And now he threatens to leave me because I cannot give him a child." Her sobs grew louder, filling the living room until it felt suffocating. My patience snapped. I tossed my handbag onto the sofa with a thud, the sound sharp enough to cut through her crying. Then with a voice as cold as ice, I said, "Then divorce him. The world is full of men. You won't die without Jared." The room fell silent. Faith's sobs stopped instantly, her wide eyes staring at me as if I had spoken blasphemy. Margaret's mouth fell open before her shock hardened into fury. "Brooke Evans, what are you saying? Are you encouraging my daughter to divorce her husband? Are you so jealous of her that you'd rather see her miserable than happy?" Faith straightened, her tears drying into anger. "That's right, Brooke. Jared and I have been together 8 years. You think I'd throw all that away just like that? How dare you?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Jared, a man who once demanded she abort her children without a thought for her health. A man whose neglect left her body broken, now wanted to discard her because she couldn't give him a baby. And still she clung to him like he was her salvation. What disgusted me most was how the entire burden of creating life rested on her shoulders alone. Faith went to every appointment, swallowed every pill, endured every test, while Jared lived carelessly. He never once gave up his cigarettes or his nightly drinks with friends. His mother even fueled his arrogance, saying smugly, "Children come from a woman's body. If she can't bear one, that's her failure." Faith, educated and supposedly modern, swallowed those words whole, never questioning them, never demanding Jared be tested, never asking him to change. She shouldered the shame while he walked away unscathed. Watching her whimper in Margaret's embrace, painting herself as a victim, I felt nothing but disgust, and yet deep inside I knew she would never stop. She would keep crying, keep clinging, keep asking the rest of us to sacrifice in her name. And the Sullivan family, blind in their loyalty to their own twisted sense of honor, would keep turning to me as if I were nothing more than a vessel, a solution to their problem. That was the night I decided I would no longer keep silent. I walked straight to my bedroom that evening, ignoring the daggers in Margaret's glare and the pitiful sobs from Faith that rang through the walls. Let them stew in their misery, I thought. I was done playing the dutiful daughter-in-law, the peacemaker who absorbed every storm without protest. But Margaret kept stroking Faith's hair, whispering comfort, instead of making dinner. So when Anthony finally came home tired from work and hungry, he walked into a cold, dark kitchen. His heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway until he shoved open our bedroom door, his face flushed with anger. "Brooke, are you blind?" he barked. "Can't you see Faith is heartbroken, and you're just lying there scrolling through your phone while the whole house goes hungry?" I looked up at him, stunned by the absurdity of his accusation, and then I laughed. Laughed because it was either that or scream. So what I asked? "Your sister has been crying about the same thing for 3 years. 3 years, Anthony. Every time we come here, she clings to your mother and repeats the same sad story over and over like some tragic character from an old soap opera. You expect me to drop everything and cook while she moans endlessly. What good would it do?" She wouldn't eat anyway. She'd just push the food away and claim she was too depressed. Anthony's jaw tightened. "So what? My mother is comforting her. That's why you should step up. You're the wife in this house, and when the kitchen is cold, that's on you. Are you planning to let everyone starve?" I sat up, tossed my phone aside, and glared at him. "Anthony, if you have so much energy to complain, why don't you go into the kitchen and cook yourself? Or better yet, why don't you take Faith out for dinner and cheer her up? Isn't that what a brother should do?" His face darkened. He slammed the door shut behind him and stormed off. Minutes later, I heard the front door slam too, followed by the sound of the car engine. Margaret, Faith, and Anthony had gone out to eat, leaving me blessedly alone. Not long after the delivery I had ordered arrived. I set up a tray, poured myself a glass of wine, and turned on a movie. The food tasted better than it had in weeks, simply because I ate in peace without Faith's whining drowning out every bite. That night when they returned, I was already asleep. I barely registered Anthony slipping into bed beside me, his arm draped over me like nothing had happened. My body stiffened, but I was too tired to fight him off. Sleep came heavy, filled with uneasy dreams. The next morning was Saturday, the one rare chance I ever had to sleep in. But when I opened my eyes, the sun was already high, nearly noon. Panic jolted through me. Margaret had lived with us long enough that weekends meant no rest. Every Saturday at exactly 7 a.m., she ran the vacuum, her voice echoing through the house as she muttered about dust and cleanliness. But today was different. The house was quiet. When I finally left the bedroom, I froze at the sight of the dining table. It was covered with dishes, every one of my favorite meals. Anthony, wearing an apron, carried out the last plate, smiling at me like he was a different man. The sight sent a chill racing down my spine. Anthony cooking, smiling at me like that. Something was wrong. I sat cautiously while Margaret ladled rice into my bowl, her expression uncharacteristically soft. Anthony placed a piece of glazed chicken on my plate, his smile never faltering. Their kindness felt foreign, staged like puppets in a play. I took a small bite, my stomach knotted with suspicion. Then Margaret sighed heavily, her theatrics beginning. People say a man's greatest fear is choosing the wrong career, and a woman's greatest fear is marrying the wrong man. Poor Faith, she truly married the wrong one. That Jared worthless. When she was younger, she went through abortions again and again because of him. I personally know of at least 2 times. And now, because she cannot bear children, he talks of divorce. How heartless can a man be? Anthony nodded solemnly. She doesn't deserve this, Mom. I remained silent, my chopsticks resting on the edge of my plate. Margaret's eyes flicked to me, her voice honeyed but sharp. Brooke, maybe it's time to think of a solution. What if Faith raised Ethan instead? You could have another child. You're still young. The words hit me like a slap. I stared at her incredulous. Before I could even form a reply, Anthony chimed in, his voice disturbingly cheerful. That's a great idea. If Brooke gives Ethan to Faith, she wouldn't have to worry about divorce. And then Brooke and I can have another baby. I nearly dropped my chopsticks. My son, my child, handed off like some charity project. But Margaret shook her head thoughtfully. No, Ethan is already older. He won't accept it. It would be better if Brooke simply carried another baby for Faith. A fresh start. That way Faith would have her own child, and Ethan would remain where he belongs. Anthony's eyes lit up. He slapped the table as though she had solved an impossible riddle. Yes, Brooke, if you carry a child for Faith, she won't have to suffer anymore. She won't lose her marriage. And later she'll have someone to care for her in her old age. They were smiling, lost in their twisted fantasy. And in that moment, I felt my face darken with rage so deep it nearly swallowed me whole. How could they speak of my body, my womb, my son, as if they were bargaining chips in some family negotiation? Their words hung in the air like poison, the clinking of chopsticks suddenly louder than my heartbeat. I slammed mine down the sharp crack, silencing the room. My voice came out low and icy. You want me to have a baby for Faith? You want me to sleep with Jared? Is that what you're saying? Anthony flinched at the venom in my tone, but recovered quickly, his brows knitting in disappointment. Brooke, don't twist it. I'm not saying it's some horrible thing. It's just helping my sister. You've always said you wanted a second child anyway. What's the difference if Faith raises this one? Margaret leaned forward, her wrinkled hands folded neatly on the table, as if we were discussing something as casual as the grocery list. Exactly. You act as if it's so shameful, Brooke. Whether the baby is raised by you or by Faith, it stays in the family. It's all the same blood. A laugh burst out of me, hollow and bitter. All the same blood. Is that what you tell yourself at night so you can sleep? Do you even hear the insanity of what you're saying? Anthony reached across the table, his hand grazing mine, as though he could tether me back to their delusion. Brooke, you're overreacting. You're the most reasonable person I know. Faith praises you all the time. She says you're kind, generous, understanding. I know you'll do the right thing. I yanked my hand away and glared at him. The right thing, Anthony, the right thing would be supporting your sister through adoption, through therapy, through modern medicine, not pimping out your own wife to your brother-in-law. Do you even realize what you're asking of me? His face flushed crimson, anger mixing with shame. Don't make it sound so dirty. No one's talking about affairs. We're talking about family helping family, that's all. Margaret's voice rose sharp as broken glass. Brooke, stop being selfish. It's one baby. One. You don't even have to do anything. Jared will handle it. You just have to lie there. Think of Faith. Think of how her life is falling apart. If she divorces, it will ruin her reputation, ruin ours. Do you really want that on your conscience? The room blurred before my eyes, fury boiling in my chest. So let me get this straight, I hissed. You'd be perfectly fine if I went to bed with another man as long as it gave you a grandchild to hand to Faith. Is that it, Anthony? Is that what you're saying? Anthony stammered, his voice breaking. No, of course not. You're my wife. I'd never let another man. I cut him off with a bitter laugh. But you just did. You just said you'd accept it. You and your mother are plotting it right now. Margaret shot to her feet, slamming her palms against the table. How dare you speak that way in my house? You're the disgrace here. Always so cold, so arrogant. If you love this family, you do what's necessary. Instead, you cling to your pride like it's worth more than Faith's marriage. Pride, I snapped. This isn't pride, it's self-respect, something you clearly threw out years ago. The table rattled as Anthony rose too, his face twisted with rage. Are you saying you'd rather see my sister abandoned than sacrifice a little of yourself, God? Brooke, sometimes. I wonder if you ever cared about anyone but yourself. His words stung, but I refused to let them see me flinch. Care about anyone but myself. I've cared for all of you more than you'll ever admit. I gave up money, time, my own peace to keep this family afloat. And now you want to throw me into bed with your sister's husband like some broodmare numb? Never. Anthony's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. His eyes searched mine, pleading and furious all at once. Brooke, please, don't ruin this. Don't make me choose between you and my family. I ripped my arm free, my laughter bitter and sharp. Choose Anthony you already have. Every time you stood by and let your mother humiliate me. Every time you ignored Faith's manipulations. Every time you asked me to sacrifice more while giving nothing in return. You chose them. And now you want me to sell my body to fix the mess Jared made over my dead body. For a moment, silence filled the room. Margaret's chest heaved, her face blotchy with rage. Anthony's jaw worked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Faith, standing in the doorway with tear-stained cheeks, finally broke the quiet. "Why are you being so cruel, Brooke?" she sobbed. "I loved Jared for 8 years. I gave him everything. And now I can't give him a child. You don't understand what that's like. Don't I deserve happiness too?" I turned on her, my voice like steel. "You want happiness? Then leave him. Find someone who actually loves you. Don't come crying to me, begging me to destroy my marriage and my dignity to clean up the disaster you created. That's not love, Faith. That's desperation." She recoiled as if I'd slapped her, her tears spilling faster. Margaret rushed to shield her, glaring at me like I was a monster. Anthony's fists clenched at his sides. But I was done. Done explaining, done pleading, done sacrificing. I pushed back from the table, the chair legs screeching across the floor. "If you think I'll ever agree to this madness, you're out of your minds. Don't ever bring it up again. Not to me, not to my son. This conversation is over." I turned and walked away, my legs trembling, but my back unbowed. Behind me, I heard Anthony's chair scrape, his voice rising in frustration. "Brooke, don't you walk away from me. You'll regret this. You'll regret it when Faith is gone, when this family falls apart and it's all your fault." I slammed the bedroom door shut, my hands shaking as I locked it. For a moment, I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. My heart pounded in my chest, fury and fear twisting together until I could barely tell them apart. Regret. The only regret I had was marrying into this cursed family in the first place. The next morning, I thought the storm had passed. Anthony left early for work without a word, his face hard, his silence more punishing than any argument. Margaret clanged pots in the kitchen as if her clattering could erase the venom of the night before. Faith's sobs had finally faded in the guest room, leaving behind a heavy, suffocating quiet. For a moment, I let myself believe maybe, just maybe, they'd realized how insane their demands were, but I was wrong. That evening, when I returned from work, I found Faith and Jared in the living room, sitting close together on the sofa. Faith's head rested on Jared's shoulder, his arm draped casually around her as if they were newlyweds, not a couple on the verge of collapse. My stomach twisted at the sight. Margaret's smile was wide and eerie, like a spider welcoming prey into its web. "Brooke, you're home," she said sweetly. Her tone so fake it made my skin crawl. "We've been waiting for you. Sit down." I didn't move. My eyes flicked to Anthony, who was leaning against the mantel. His face dark, his eyes avoiding mine. He didn't speak, didn't defend me, didn't stop what was coming. His silence was an answer in itself. Faith rose to her feet, rushing toward me with outstretched hands. "Brooke, don't be angry anymore. Please, let's not fight. We all want the same thing, to keep this family together. That's why Jared and I are moving in here just for a while. It'll be easier to coordinate." Her words struck me like ice water. "Coordinate? What the hell are you talking about?" Margaret stepped forward, her voice calm, deliberate, cruel. "From tonight, you'll stay in the small room with Jared. Faith will sleep with me. This way, everything is discreet, organized. No one outside will ever know. It stays in the family." The world tilted. My hands clenched at my sides, my fingernails biting into my palms. "You're insane," I whispered. "Do you hear yourselves?" "Do you realize what you're saying?" Jared chuckled. His teeth yellowed, a sliver of meat still wedged between them from dinner. His eyes roamed over me with a hunger that made bile rise in my throat. "Don't fight it, Brooke. It doesn't have to be unpleasant. We'll make it work. Maybe you'll even enjoy yourself." I wanted to vomit. Every inch of my body screamed to run, to claw my way out of that house and never look back. I turned to Anthony, desperate, searching for any sign of the man I once loved. But he only looked down, his jaw tight, his silence damning. His refusal to stop this madness was worse than outright betrayal. "You're agreeing to this," my voice cracked. "Anthony, are you really letting them do this to me, to us?" He sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping. "Brooke, what choice do we have? Faith can't have children. Jared's mother is already pressuring them to divorce. If they split, it'll destroy Faith. Can't you understand? This is the only way to save her marriage. I laughed sharp and bitter, the sound echoing through the room. Save her marriage by destroying mine, by destroying me. Do you even hear how twisted that is? Margaret's face hardened, her patience gone. Enough, Brooke. Stop your dramatics. This is happening whether you like it or not. You can scream, you can fight, but in the end, you will do what's best for this family. I shook my head violently, my chest heaving. No, never. I will never afore. I could finish. I felt the cold snap of metal. Behind me the door slammed and a lock clicked into place. Margaret's eyes gleamed with triumph. The door is locked, she said softly, almost soothingly. Stop resisting, Brooke. Jared will take care of the rest. You'll thank me someday when Faith has the child she's always dreamed of. My pulse thundered in my ears. You locked me in, I screamed, pounding on the door with my fists. Anthony. Open this door, don't let them do this to me. But Anthony didn't move. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He stood there, a ghost of a man, while his mother orchestrated my humiliation. Faith's voice trembled, tears streaking down her face. Mom, this isn't right. Maybe Brooke doesn't want Margaret silenced her with a sharp glare. Quiet. You think children just appear out of thin air? Do you want to keep Jared or not? This is how it's done. Don't question me. Faith buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled her shoulders shaking. Jared rose from the sofa, his footsteps heavy as he approached me. Each step made my heart pound harder, my breath shorter. He smelled of sweat and stale beer, and the closer he got, the more suffocated I felt. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, he muttered, his grin lewd. Just relax. Margaret's right, you might even like it. I backed away, my spine hitting the wall, nowhere left to run. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob, rattling it desperately. Anthony, please, I'm your wife. How can you stand there and let this happen? Still nothing. His silence was my answer. Jared's hand shot out, fingers grazing my arm. I recoiled, slapping his hand away, my voice breaking into a scream. Don't touch me. But Margaret's voice came again, cold and cruel. Stop fighting, Brooke. It's already decided. The sooner you accept it, the easier it will be. This is your duty. Do it for Faith. Do it for all of us. My vision blurred with tears, fury and terror colliding until I could barely breathe. My body trembled, but my spirit flared hotter than ever. No, I spat. I will never accept this. Not now, not ever. And if you think you can lock me in a room and hand me over like I'm nothing, you've underestimated me. Jared lunged forward, but I shoved him back with all my strength. My scream tore through the house, raw and primal, shaking the walls. Somewhere deep down, I prayed someone, anyone, would hear. And then from outside the door, a small voice pierced through the chaos. Mom. Mom, are you in there, Ethan? My son's voice trembling, scared but strong enough to stop my heart. He pounded on the locked door, his cries growing louder. Mom, answer me, please, are you in there? I froze, tears spilling down my cheeks. My little boy, my 8-year-old baby, the only pure thing left in this poisoned family. Margaret hissed, panic flashing across her face. Don't let him hear, don't let him see. But it was too late. Ethan's fists beat against the door, his sobs shaking the frame. And then another sound, a heavy crash, the splintering of wood, the rush of air as the door burst open. I turned, my breath catching as I saw them. My parents. Charles and Linda, faces etched with fury, storming into the room. My father's fist flew before Jared could react, connecting with his jaw in a sickening crack. Jared stumbled, stunned, blood spraying from his lip. My mother's hand lashed out, striking Margaret so hard, the older woman collapsed into a heap of stunned silence. And for the first time in years, I felt hope flood my chest. The police sirens cut through the heavy night air, their red and blue lights flashing against the rain-soaked windows, as if the entire neighborhood had been summoned to witness the collapse of my life. Within minutes, officers stormed the house, their voices sharp, commanding, slicing through the chaos. Jared was still staggering from my father's punch, blood dripping from his mouth. Margaret was on the floor, clutching her face and shrieking that she was the victim. Faith sat crumpled in the corner, rocking back and forth, muttering incoherent apologies. Anthony stood frozen, pale and silent, as though he had finally realized the depth of his betrayal, but had no strength to face it. We were all herded into separate cars, Ethan clinging to my side, like his life depended on it. My father refused to let go of my arm, his hand steadying me, while my mother held Ethan close, whispering soothing words to calm his sobs. For the first time in years, I didn't feel entirely alone. At the precinct, everything became a blur of questions, fluorescent lights, and the smell of stale coffee. The detectives pressed me gently for details, their eyes filled with something between horror and pity as I described how my in-laws had plotted to lock me in with Jared. Jared, desperate to save himself, spilled every detail. His words slurred with fear and anger. "It wasn't my idea," he stammered, his swollen lip bleeding anew. "Anthony's mother told me to do it." Anthony agreed. "I didn't drug her, I didn't touch her, I just went along." His cowardice didn't surprise me, but his confession cut through the fog of shock like a blade. He named names. He confirmed what I had screamed for years, that the abuse I endured wasn't just in my head. Margaret, in a final desperate attempt to shield Anthony and Faith, threw herself to the floor of the interrogation room. "It was me," she wailed. "All of it was my idea. My children had nothing to do with it. I made every decision. Punish me, not them." Her tears fell like acid, eating away at what little credibility she had left. But I was ready. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone. I had almost forgotten about the security camera in the living room installed years ago, when Ethan was small, so I could check on him while I worked late. It had always been there, silent, unnoticed, forgotten until now. The detectives leaned forward as I scrolled through the footage, my finger hovering over the play button. "Watch this," I whispered, my voice sharp with anger, steady with resolve. The screen flickered to life, and there it was, Margaret and Anthony in the living room, plotting in hushed tones, their words venomous. Margaret detailed the plan step by step, her voice low but clear, and Anthony nodded his agreement, unmistakable. Faith appeared, wringing her hands, whispering protests that were quickly drowned out by her mother's commands. Jared stood in the background, shifting uncomfortably, but not leaving, not objecting. The audio captured it all, every word, every vile justification, every cowardly silence. The room where I sat with the detectives fell silent, save for the hiss of the video. When it ended, the lead officer let out a long, slow breath. "Well," he said quietly, "that makes things very clear. For the first time in years, the burden of proof wasn't on me. The truth stood on its own, undeniable, captured by a lens that never lied." Anthony was brought into my room, moments later, escorted by 2 officers. His eyes were red, his face hollow, but he still tried to play the husband card. He dropped to his knees in front of me, his hands clutching my jeans. "Brooke, please," he begged, his voice hoarse. "If I go to prison, what will happen to Ethan? Do you want him to grow up with a father behind bars carrying that shame? Please. Write a statement for leniency. Do it for our son." I looked down at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a man who had betrayed me in ways I couldn't fathom, who had stood silent while his family conspired to ruin me. His tears no longer had power over me. His pleas sounded hollow. Before I could answer, Ethan stepped into the room, his small frame stiff, his eyes hard. He had insisted on following me, refusing to leave my side. Now he stood tall, as if years older than his 8 years, his voice steady and cutting. "I'd rather not have a dad," he said coldly, his gaze fixed on Anthony. "I'd rather say I don't have one than say you're mine." The words landed like a thunderclap. Anthony's face crumpled, his hands falling uselessly to his sides. Margaret, hearing from the hallway, let out a wail, but even she seemed to understand that Ethan's words were the final nail in the coffin. When the trial came, the courtroom was heavy with whispers and glares, reporters scribbling furiously as the details spilled into public record. The footage from the camera sealed the case. Anthony's complicity, Margaret's orchestration, Faith's reluctant cooperation, Jared's willingness. The sentences came swiftly. Margaret 2 years for conspiracy and attempted coercion, Anthony 2 years for aiding and abetting, Faith 1 year for complicity, Jared 3 years for attempted assault and coercion. As the gavel struck, the noise of the courtroom seemed to fade. My only focus was Ethan holding my hand tightly, his little fingers warm against mine. When we finally walked out into the sunlight, the weight of years lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer Anthony's wife, no longer Margaret's scapegoat, no longer Faith's solution. I was Brooke Evans, free at last, with my son by my side. We moved in with my parents, who welcomed us with open arms, their home filled with the warmth I had been denied for so long. Ethan adjusted quickly, his laughter slowly returning, his nightmares fading with time. My mother often reminded me, "You're not just a mother, Brooke. You're you first. Don't ever forget that." And she was right. I had lost years, to silence, to endurance, to misplaced loyalty. But I had gained something greater, the courage to walk away, the clarity to see my worth, and the determination to build a life where my son could thrive without fear. Looking at Ethan, I knew I had chosen the right path. His smile, bright and unburdened, was proof enough. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And as I tucked Ethan into bed that night, his small hand clutching mine, I whispered a silent promise: never again would I let anyone strip us of our peace. Never again would I silence my own voice for the sake of others. We were free, at last. When I look back on those years, it almost feels like I'm talking about another woman, someone I used to know but can barely recognize anymore. She was quiet, obedient, constantly apologizing for things that weren't her fault, always trying to hold a family together that had no intention of ever protecting her. That woman was me, Brooke Evans, and for far too long I let myself believe that silence was strength and endurance was love. But silence only gave them power. Endurance only taught them they could break me, and I would never fight back. I wanted to start this episode with honesty, because I know so many women and men too, watching right now, might be living their own versions of my story. Maybe not with the same outrageous cruelty, but in the smaller, quieter ways that eat you alive. The dismissive husband, the manipulative mother-in-law, the sibling who plays the victim until you're drained dry. Abuse doesn't always come with bruises. Sometimes it comes with expectations, with shame, with the word selfish thrown at you until you start to believe it. For 3 years, I carried that word like a scarlet letter. Selfish for not giving my sister-in-law a child. Selfish for refusing to sacrifice my body for her marriage. Selfish for daring to complain about the impossible. Anthony, my husband, repeated it so many times that even I started whispering it to myself at night. Maybe I am selfish. Maybe I should just do it. Maybe this is what family means, giving until there's nothing left of you. But here's the truth. I had to learn the hardest way possible. Family doesn't demand the destruction of your dignity. Family doesn't ask you to betray your vows, your body, your sanity. Love doesn't chain you, it frees you. Respect doesn't silence you, it listens. The night they locked me in that room with Jared, I thought my life was over. Not because I feared death, but because I feared living the rest of my years as nothing more than a vessel, a pawn, in someone else's twisted story. I can still feel the weight of that locked door, the way my heart slammed against my ribs, the sound of my own voice screaming for Anthony, while he stood outside pretending not to hear. That was the moment my marriage ended, not with the divorce papers, but with his silence. And then the miracle. My parents bursting through the door like angels of fury. My father's hand striking Jared across the face, my mother's voice rising above Margaret's manipulations. For the first time, someone fought for me. For the first time, someone said out loud what I had been too afraid to believe, that I was the victim, not the villain. The courtroom gave me justice. The prison sentences gave me closure. But it was Ethan, my son, who gave me the courage to never look back. When he said I'd rather not have a dad than call him mine, something inside me shattered and rebuilt all at once. I realized that children don't need perfect families. They need safe ones. They don't need 2 parents at any cost. They need at least one who will protect them at all costs. I share this not to dredge up pain, but to offer a light to anyone stumbling through the darkness I once lived in. Maybe your story doesn't look like mine. Maybe your prison isn't a locked room, but the constant belittling of your choices. Maybe it's the gaslighting that makes you question your memory, your sanity, your worth. Maybe it's the voice in your head that whispers, "You're nothing without them." Hear me clearly. You are something. You are someone. You are enough, even if you walk away with nothing but your own 2 hands and the breath in your lungs. When I finally left Anthony, I had no home of my own. No wealth, no safety net. But I had Ethan's hand in mine, and I had my parents' arms around us. And that was enough to rebuild. In America, we talk a lot about independence, about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But independence doesn't mean you never lean on anyone. It means you get to choose who you lean on. It means you stop letting people who tear you down hold the strings to your life. There are nights even now when I wake up shaking, dreaming of that locked door, that laughter, that betrayal. Trauma doesn't vanish when the judge bangs a gavel. Healing isn't linear. Some days I feel powerful. Other days I feel like that broken woman all over again. But I keep moving forward. And every smile from Ethan, every math problem he solves, every Lego castle he builds, reminds me that I made the right choice. To the women watching who are still deciding leave when you're ready, but don't stay because you think your child won't survive without the family. What children can't survive is watching their mother destroyed. Ethan is proof. He's thriving now, not because I endured, but because I walked away. To the men watching, love doesn't demand silence. Protecting your ego isn't the same as protecting your family. Don't confuse control with care. Don't mistake submission for devotion. To the mothers-in-law, fathers-in-law, relatives everywhere, your children don't belong to you once they marry. They aren't pawns for your traditions, your pride, your plans. They're adults building families of their own. Respect that or you will lose them. I wanted to end this with gratitude because as painful as my story was, it gave me clarity. I am grateful for the parents who refused to let me fall. I am grateful for the son who became my reason to rise. And strangely, I am even grateful for the betrayal, because it taught me the price of silence and the value of my own voice. So here I am, Brooke Evans, speaking directly to you through City With Me. If you remember nothing else from my story, remember this: you are not selfish for saying no. You are not cruel for protecting yourself. You are not broken for leaving. You are brave for choosing peace over chaos, dignity over shame, freedom over fear. Ethan and I are building a new life now. It's not perfect, but it's ours. We laugh more, we argue sometimes, but the kind of arguments families are supposed to have over homework, over bedtime, over what pizza toppings to order. We live without walking on eggshells, and that alone feels like heaven. If you're still trapped in your own storm, hold on. There is life after survival. There is joy after betrayal. There is freedom waiting for you too. Thank you for listening. And if my story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to City With Me, because every story we share is another reminder that none of us are truly alone.